Welcome to Zoe Crossdressing. The diner hummed with low voices and clinking china, the rich smell of coffee hanging in the air. Swear on my life, biggest buck I've ever seen, out past the West Ridge, Lyle boasted, stretching back in his chair, his red plaid shirt straining as much from ego as from his build. Dropped him clean. One shot. Right between the antlers. Stan snorted and tugged at the brim of his blaze orange cap. You couldn't hit the side of a shed if you were locked inside it. And that deer wasn't half as far away as you claim. 10 points, tops. Across the table, Phil said nothing. He stirred his coffee slowly, watching the dark liquid spin. So, Dave said, breaking the tension, we'll head up to Phil's place Friday night. Roll out before sunrise Saturday. Phil's spoon stopped. He set it down carefully. I'm not going this year. The table went dead silent. Forks hovered midair. Someone's mug paused halfway to their lips. What? Lyle blinked. You serious? Can't make it, Phil said. Got some family things. Stan leaned forward, disbelief written across his face. Family things? Your kids are grown. And Dorothy knows this weekend's untouchable. Phil stood, the chair legs scraping softly against the floor. Life changes. Not during deer season, Dave said. We've done this every year for 24, Lyle cut in. Started the year Reagan got shot. I know, Phil replied. He pulled a 5 from his wallet and set it on the table. I'm sorry. Hope you guys have a good hunt. At least let us use the cabin, Stan called as Phil walked away. Can't, Phil said without turning back. Already promised it. The bell over the diner door jingled as he stepped outside, leaving the others staring after him. Something's off, Dave muttered. Maybe he's sick, Stan said. Didn't look it, Lyle replied, flagging the waitress for a refill. Could be trouble at home. Dorothy's been pushing him to slow down. They talked it over for another hour, chasing guesses and half-baked theories, none of them close to the truth. Phil drove his pickup through the quiet town streets, headlights cutting through the early afternoon gloom. When he got home, Dorothy was in the kitchen, working dough against the smooth stone counter. Flour dusted her green apron, and her silver hair was pulled into a neat bun. She looked up as he came in, hands still moving, already knowing this year would be different. She didn't look up from the counter when she spoke. So, how did they react? Pretty much exactly how you'd imagine, Phil said. Lyle looked like I'd run over his dog. Dorothy laughed softly. They'll live. One missed season won't end the world. Phil slipped his arms around her waist from behind, resting his chin near her shoulder. Thanks. For being okay with all this. She turned, leaving flowery flower-shaped smudges across his shirt. I've been okay with things for 35 years. This one's easy. I owe you, he said. You already wash the dishes every night, she replied. Debt paid. She kissed his cheek. When do you head out? Friday afternoon. I want to arrive before dark. And you have everything? He nodded, a faint color creeping into his face. Picked up the last few things yesterday. Her smile said she knew exactly what that meant. Good. And maybe you'll call that therapist I mentioned. Dr. Morrison. After the weekend, Phil said. I want to see how this feels first. One step at a time, Dorothy said, turning back to her dough. Just be safe. And be happy. The next 2 days crawled by. At the warehouse, Phil went through the motions, driving the forklift, stacking pallets, signing forms, while his thoughts stayed miles ahead, already on the mountain road. When his supervisor asked if he was feeling all right, Phil blamed a cold. Thursday night found him in the basement, standing before an old cedar chest. His hands weren't quite steady as he lifted the lid. Inside were neatly folded pieces wrapped in tissue, a black dress scattered with tiny white flowers, a tailored navy skirt suit, blouses in soft blues and reds. Beneath them, a small wooden box held modest jewelry, nothing flashy, just things he'd liked. He brushed his fingers over the fabric, remembering each purchase. A thrift store 2 towns away. A discreet online order. Each one a mix of thrill and shame. Phyllis, he murmured, testing the name. It sounded unfamiliar, yet oddly right, like remembering lyrics you hadn't sung in years. Friday came wrapped in gray skies and mist. Phil packed the truck carefully, tucking the suitcase beneath a tarp alongside groceries and bundled firewood. He'd told Dorothy he'd leave at 3, but by noon he was pacing. "Go," she finally said, ushering him toward the door. "You're making me anxious." "What if?" "No what ifs. You've thought this through for months. Go." The drive took 2 hours along narrow, twisting roads. The cabin, an A-frame tucked deep among pines, had come to him 15 years earlier from his uncle. It had always been a place for beer, stories, and long-standing traditions. This time felt different. He parked behind the cabin, hidden from the road. The rain had passed, leaving the air sharp and clean. He unloaded, lit the wood stove, put away food, simple, grounding tasks that slowed his breathing. When night fell, he stood in the bedroom, suitcase open on the quilt. His work clothes lay discarded on the floor. In the mirror stood the man everyone knew, 55, graying, soft around the middle, a hunter, a grandfather. But not tonight. He showered with the lavender soap Dorothy had slipped into his bag without comment. Then he shaved, not just his face, but everywhere else. The razor nicked him once or twice, he dabbed the spots and kept going. From a smaller bag, he took out items ordered quietly, carefully. They felt awkward, unfamiliar, but essential. Padding, shaping, support, things he'd practiced with in secret. His hands trembled as he adjusted them. Next came plain white underwear, then nude pantyhose, which took 3 tries before cooperating. He laughed softly at himself, the sound echoing in the small room, nervous and free all at once. He perched on the edge of the bed, slowly easing the stockings up his legs, careful not to snag the fabric. His skin looked unfamiliar, smoother somehow, lighter, and the sensation made him pause more than once, just to take it in. The dress waited on a hanger hooked over the closet door. He'd picked it with intention for this first night, knee-length, high enough at the neckline to feel safe, sleeves that reached past the elbow. The black jersey draped softly, scattered with tiny white flowers that reminded him of a night sky. He stepped into it and wrestled with the zipper, twisting awkwardly until it finally slid closed. In the bathroom, another test awaited. The wig sat patiently on its foam stand, warm auburn curls brushing just below the shoulders. Tutorials had made it look easy. Reality did not. It took several tries before it sat right, and far too many bobby pins before he learned restraint, easing the tight pull against his scalp. Makeup was the real trial. Hands that never shook while lifting heavy loads or field dressing a deer now trembled over a sponge. The first layer of foundation looked wrong, too dark, too artificial, and he sighed, washed his face, and began again. The second time was gentler. Powder to soften it. A hint of brown shadow. Nothing bold, nothing loud. Mascara nearly won the fight, the wand tapping his eyelid twice before he figured out the angle. Lipstick came last. A quiet pink the clerk had called rose petal. This time his hand stayed steady, tracing the natural curve of his mouth. He leaned back from the mirror. It wasn't perfect. The shoulders were still wide, the hands unmistakably large. But in the warm bathroom light, with his head tilted just right, she was there. Black flats finished the look, size 11, ordered from a specialty shop that understood. He practiced walking across the room, replaying advice from videos, shorter strides, hips leading, shoulders relaxed. In the living room, he poured a glass of white Zinfandel, something Phil would never touch, but Phyllis liked. He lowered himself onto the couch, smoothing the dress over his legs, and watched the fire crackle. "Hello," he said softly, testing the sound. Too low. He tried again, lighter. "Hello, I'm Phyllis." Not perfect, but closer. The weekend lay ahead of him, wide and untouched. He'd written a small list, ordinary things that felt anything but: cooking breakfast dressed like this, reading on the porch, walking among the trees. Things Phil had done 1,000 times. Things Phyllis never had. For now, he simply sat, letting the sensations settle, the fabric against his skin, the gentle weight of the wig, the faint taste of lipstick, learning what it felt like to just be. When he rose to top off his wine, the hem of the dress brushed softly against his legs, the gentle sway pulling an unexpected smile from him. It vanished instantly at the sharp knock on the door. His heart slammed. The glass froze in his hand. No one knew he was up here. The closest neighbor lived miles away. Another knock followed, harder this time. "Phil? You in there?" Lyle's voice, thick, unsteady, cut straight through him. "I saw your truck, buddy." Cold panic spread through his chest. How was Lyle here? Why wasn't he back at camp with the others? Phil's mind scrambled. He couldn't open the door like this. But Lyle wasn't the type to give up, especially with whiskey in his system. "Come on, man," Lyle called. "I just want to talk." Then, louder and annoyed, "Fine. Be stubborn. I'll sit right here till you stop sulking." Heavy boots thudded onto the porch. Phil crept toward the window and eased the curtain aside. Lyle had collapsed into a rocking chair, bottle of Jack dangling from his hand, blaze-orange jacket glowing under the porch light. Time dragged. Lyle started belting out a mangled Johnny Cash tune, wildly off-key. He wasn't going anywhere. Phil swallowed hard and made a choice. He smoothed his lipstick, adjusted the wig, and inhaled slowly. His voice wasn't ready, but Lyle was drunk enough that maybe it wouldn't matter. One last glance in the mirror. "Hello, I'm Phyllis," he whispered, lifting his pitch. He moved to the door. "Who's there?" he called. Lyle lurched upright. "Oh, sorry, ma'am. Looking for Phil." "This his cabin." "Phil isn't here," Phil said, the words tight but steady enough. "I'm borrowing the place for the weekend." "Borrowing?" Lyle squinted at the door. "Who are you?" Phil's hand trembled on the knob. This was madness. Still, he cracked the door just enough to be seen. "I'm Phyllis," he said. His cousin. From Ohio. Lyle leaned closer, eyes struggling to focus. "Cousin?" Phil never said nothing about. "Distant," Phil cut in quickly. "We don't talk much." "Oh." Lyle swayed, then nodded. "You know where he is?" "He ditched us." "Deer season, of all times." "He said he had family matters," Phil replied. "Let me use the cabin for some peace and quiet." That lying, Lyle stopped himself. "Sorry, ma'am. Didn't mean to swear." "It's fine," Phil said. "You should head back. Your friends are probably asleep." "Lightweights," Lyle muttered, taking another pull from the bottle. He glanced at Phil again. "You here alone?" Every instinct screamed. "My husband's inside," Phil said quickly. "Sleeping." "Oh, right. Sure." Lyle stepped back. "Sorry to bother you, Mrs. Phyllis is fine." "Pretty name," Lyle said, squinting again. "You kinda look like Phil. Around the eyes." Phil's pulse thundered. Family resemblance. Lyle stared a second longer, then shook his head as if clearing fog. "Well, sorry again. Enjoy your night. Drive safe. Always do." Lyle shuffled down the steps, then paused and turned back. "Hey, Phyllis?" "Yes?" "When you see Phil, tell him he's a jackass for skipping deer season." Phil closed the door quietly and leaned against it, knees weak, heart racing, then let out a breath he felt like he'd been holding his whole life. But still, Lyle added, his voice softer now, I hope whatever family mess he's dealing with turns out okay. He looked pretty torn up about it. The words hit harder than Phil expected. His eyes burned suddenly. I'll tell him, he said quietly. Lyle gave a crooked little salute and staggered off the porch. Moments later, a truck engine coughed to life somewhere down the road, then faded into the trees. Phil shut the door and pressed his back against it, his knees unsteady. The whole exchange couldn't have lasted more than a few minutes, yet it felt like he'd run a marathon. His wig had shifted, lipstick smudged from nervous chewing. In the bathroom mirror, Phyllis stared back, rumpled, imperfect, but unmistakably triumphant. She'd done it. She'd convinced a man who'd known Phil for 3 decades. After fixing her makeup and settling the wig back into place, she returned to the couch. The wine tasted brighter now, the fire's warmth more comforting. Outside, an owl called from the darkness, the ordinary sounds of the woods suddenly surreal. The weekend was still intact, though she made a mental note to park the truck somewhere less obvious in the morning. She picked up the paperback Dorothy had insisted she bring, a soft romance with a pastel cover, and curled into the couch. About an hour later, headlights swept across the window again. This time, she didn't freeze. Peeking through the curtain, Phil recognized Stan's pickup pulling in beside the cabin. Lyle climbed out with Dave close behind, waving his arms animatedly. I swear, Lyle was saying, she looked just like Phil in a wig. You're drunk, Dave replied flatly. Maybe, Lyle said, but I know what I saw. He's got some woman up there calling herself his cousin. Stan stretched and yawned. So? Guy lends his cabin to family. Big deal. You don't think it's strange? Lyle pressed. Skipping deer season for the first time ever, and suddenly there's a mystery cousin? Everything's strange when you're hammered, Dave said. Let it go. I'm telling you, something's off, Lyle insisted. Black dress with flowers, red hair, and her voice. Her voice what? I dunno. Weird. Like she was sick or something. Phil barely breathed as the debate continued. At last, Stan waved them off and steered them back toward their truck. Probably having an affair, Lyle muttered as they walked. That's why she said her husband was inside, covering for him. Now you're just inventing stories, Stan said. Think about it, Lyle argued. Dorothy doesn't know he's here. He lied about family stuff. Who's to say this Phyllis isn't someone he met online? Truck doors slammed, ending the conversation. The vehicle rolled away, its taillights shrinking into the dark. Phil watched until they vanished. An affair. That's what they thought. The irony almost made him laugh. In a strange way, it wasn't entirely wrong, just not the sort they imagined. He double-checked the locks, then tried to return to his book. The words blurred. His mind kept circling back, replaying every second with Lyle. Had his voice sounded believable? Had the porch light betrayed him? Near midnight, he gave up and prepared for bed. The nightgown felt unfamiliar against his skin, powder blue satin Dorothy had chosen herself. If you're going to do this, she'd said, smiling, you might as well feel pretty. He carefully removed the wig and set it back on its stand, the cabin finally quiet again, the truth safe for one more night. The cold cream wiped away the careful lines and colors, and Phil's familiar face slowly returned in the mirror. Still, when he slid beneath the blankets, Phyllis lingered in his thoughts. Sleep didn't come easily. Every crack of a branch or whisper of wind made him tense, half expecting another knock. But nothing happened. The woods settled, and eventually he drifted off. Morning arrived gently, sunlight spilling across the bedroom floor. Saturday felt like stepping into new territory. He padded into the kitchen in the nightgown, brewed coffee, and stood there for a moment just taking it in, the quiet, the steam rising from the mug, the simple rightness of it. Choosing clothes took longer than he expected. He finally settled on jeans and a deep burgundy sweater, comfortable, understated, but undeniably different from Phil's usual flannel. The morning routine went smoother this time. His hands remembered what to do. Foundation, powder, a light touch of color. Not perfect, but close enough. He carried his coffee out to the porch and sat watching chipmunks dart through the leaves, chasing and scolding each other. Sunlight caught the auburn wig, and without thinking he brushed a strand back behind his ear, then smiled at himself for the habit. Breakfast was plain eggs and toast, but eating it this way made it feel like something special. He cleaned up afterwards, still fully dressed, jewelry catching the light as he moved, a quiet tune humming in his chest. As the morning wore on, restlessness crept in. The walls felt closer. The woods called. He'd packed hiking boots of women's, size 11, and the jeans would do fine. Still, the thought of running into someone made his stomach knot. By noon, the pull of the trail outweighed the fear. He locked the cabin and headed out. The boots fit differently than his old ones, snug at the heel, but they carried him well. The forest didn't care who he was. Birds sang. Squirrels scolded. Leaves whispered overhead. He'd walked this trail countless times, yet now every step felt fresh. The sweater shifted as he moved. The wig tugged gently when he turned his head. Even his walk had changed, deliberate, practiced, softer. After 2 miles, he reached the overlook. The same rocky ledge. The same wide valley spread below. He sat on the familiar boulder, crossing his ankles the way he'd rehearsed, and unwrapped his sandwich. "Beautiful day," a voice said suddenly. He startled as a hiker stepped into view, mid-60s maybe, gray beard, high-end gear, clearly not from around here. "Yes," Phil said, lifting his pitch. "It really is." The man smiled. "Mind if I sit a minute? These knees don't love hills anymore." Phil nodded and shifted over. The man settled beside him with a grateful sigh, taking out a water bottle. "You hiking alone?" he asked. Phil felt his heart beat once, hard, then steadied himself. "Just out for the day," Phil said lightly. "My husband's back at the cabin. We're sticking to the safer trails. Gets risky around here during hunting season, people shooting at anything that moves." The words made something tighten in him, but he kept his expression pleasant. "You're not a hunter, then?" the man asked. "Absolutely not," the hiker said before Phil could answer, waving a hand. "Barbaric hobby. Who actually enjoys killing innocent animals?" Phil felt the sting, sharp and sudden, but he kept his tone even. "Some people call it tradition. Or conservation." The man scoffed. "That's the excuse. Mostly it's men playing war in the woods. Insecure types trying to feel powerful." Phil swallowed the response rising in his throat. He'd been hunting since he was 12, taught patiently by his father, who'd learned from his own. It had never been about dominance. It was about food on the table, respect for the animal, knowing the land. But Phyllis didn't debate strangers. She smiled softly and redirected. "So, where are you from?" he asked. "Philadelphia," the man replied. "We've got a weekend place nearby." "You?" "Ohio," Phil said. "Visiting family." They talked a bit longer, about weather patterns, trail conditions, how quickly fall slipped into winter up here. Soon the man stood, stretched his back, and wished Phil a good hike before disappearing down the path. Phil stayed seated, staring out over the valley. He'd passed again. Another stranger convinced. Yet the remarks about hunting lingered, cutting deeper than he expected. Was that how the world saw him when he was Phil? Just another caricature? The walk back was slower. Thoughts tangled with each step. Back at the cabin, he changed into the black dress from the night before. It already felt familiar, comforting. He began preparing dinner, chopping vegetables at the counter, the soft swish of fabric with each movement grounding him. Cooking had always calmed him, doing it this way felt quietly right. Darkness came early. He built up the fire, poured wine, and curled into the couch with his book. No knocks. No headlights. Just the fire's murmur and the steady rhythm of a story meant to end happily. Sunday morning arrived too soon. He woke with the knowledge pressing down on him, this was the last day. Tomorrow, the suitcase would close. Phyllis would be folded away. The thought left a dull ache in his chest. He dressed carefully, choosing his favorite outfit for the final hours, the navy suit with the cream blouse. It made him feel composed, intentional, like someone who had her life in order. Church clothes, Dorothy would have said with a smile. Phyllis wasn't going to church. But she stood in the quiet cabin anyway, dressed neatly, savoring every remaining moment before the world asked her to disappear again. Instead of packing, he settled onto the porch once more, this time with a notebook balanced on his knee. The pen moved faster than he expected. Sentences spilled out, messy and raw. He wrote about the first time he'd slipped into one of Dorothy's old slips while she was at work, how his hands had shaken, how shame and wonder had tangled together in his chest. About the quiet happiness that followed. About 2 decades spent locking that feeling away. I don't want to stop, he wrote. I don't want to go back. I want to be Phyllis all the time. He paused, tears dotting the page. But how do you do that when everyone knows Phil? Phil has a job. A history. Friends. Grandkids. Phil is expected. The journal took it all without protest, the paper darkening where his tears fell. Lunch was reheated soup from the night before. He ate without tasting it, already mourning what the afternoon would bring, the careful undoing. Wig back on the stand. Dresses folded away. Color scrubbed from his face. Phyllis packed into silence. A car engine broke through his thoughts. Not a pickup. Smaller. He looked up just as Dorothy's Honda pulled in beside his truck. She stepped out with a covered dish in one hand and her purse on her shoulder, calm as if this were any ordinary visit. She knocked lightly. It's me, she called. Phil opened the door without changing a thing. Dorothy's gaze traveled over him, navy suit, cream blouse, neat makeup, taking it all in. Then she smiled. That suit really suits you, she said. Better than I imagined. She lifted the dish. I brought lasagna. Figured you might want something real to eat. She moved past him into the cabin like nothing was unusual at all. Set the dish on the counter. Slipped off her coat and hung it up. Only then did she turn back to him fully. You've been crying, she said gently. Come here. She wrapped her arms around him, careful with the wig. Even towering over her, even dressed like this, Phil felt held, anchored. Safe. I'm proud of you, she murmured. For what? He asked, his voice small. For playing pretend in the woods? For telling yourself the truth, Dorothy said. That's not pretend. That's brave. They sat side by side on the couch while the oven warmed. Dorothy asked questions, practical and tender all at once. Did the shoes hurt? Was the wig itchy? Had anyone noticed? Phil told her about Lyle. Dorothy burst out laughing, wiping her eyes. An affair, she said between giggles. Oh, that's priceless. Phil laughed too, the sound shaky but real, as the cabin filled with warmth, the smell of lasagna, and the quiet certainty that he wasn't alone anymore. Wait until I tell my sister, Dorothy said with a grin. Just kidding. Your secret's safe with me. She patted his knee gently. Though, be ready for some questions from the boys. They think Phyllis is my mistress. Phil chuckled weakly. Let them think what they want. Better than the truth, right? Dorothy's face softened, becoming serious. That's for you to decide. This weekend wasn't about hiding, it was about discovering what you want. So, what do you want? Phil stared at his hands. I like being Phyllis. But I can't just stop being Phil. Why not? She asked softly. The question lingered, patient and steady. Because people rely on Phil. I have responsibilities. Grandkids, friends, a life. Dorothy reached over, squeezing his hand. I married the person I love. If that person is happier as Phyllis, then I'll love Phyllis too. Phil blinked, conflicted. It's not that simple. It is, she said gently. Everything else is just logistics. They ate lasagna off paper plates, avoiding the dishwasher. Dorothy commented on his makeup, suggested a softer lipstick, even offered to go shopping for clothes that fit better. You're handling this surprisingly well, Phil said. I've had 35 years to prepare, she replied. Don't think I didn't notice the catalogs tucked in the garage, your research on the computer, the way I caught you looking at my dresses. Phil swallowed. Why didn't you say anything? You had to come to it on your own, she said simply. As the afternoon faded, Dorothy helped him pack away the weekend. Each item folded carefully, wrapped in tissue. The wig went in its box. Makeup tucked into its case. You can keep these at home now, she said. No more basement hiding. What do we tell people? Nothing if I don't want to, or everything if I do, Phil said. We'll figure it out together. He changed back into Phil's clothes, jeans, flannel, boots. The transformation now felt like donning a costume. Phil was the disguise, Phyllis the reality. Dorothy followed him down the mountain roads, waving until he disappeared from view. At home, he carried the suitcase inside without a shred of shame. The cedar chest in the basement would remain empty, its secrets now in the bedroom closet. Monday arrived too soon. Phil dressed mechanically, tan pants, blue shirt, steel-toed boots. Beneath the uniform, a small act of rebellion, women's underwear, hidden, a tiny piece of Phyllis remaining. At the warehouse, life appeared normal. Orders to fill, pallets to move. His supervisor commented on how well he seemed to have recovered from his cold. The guys were another story. At lunch, they clustered as usual. Conversation stuttered when Phil sat. So, good weekend with the family? Lyle asked finally. Fine. You? Oh, interesting time. Met your cousin. Phil kept his face neutral. Phyllis from Ohio? Lyle prompted. Nice lady. Bit masculine though, Dave added. No offense. None taken, Phil replied. Stan cleared his throat. Look, Phil, we're your friends. If something's happening, like an affair. Lyle jumped in, we're here for you. No judgment. Phil almost laughed. No judgment for an affair, but the truth? There's nothing going on, he said. Phyllis just needed a quiet weekend. I offered the cabin. Her husband? Lyle repeated. Exactly, Phil said. Drop it, Stan said. Family business is private. Hunting stories returned to the table, though he noticed the occasional glance in his direction. The secret hovered like a weight, but it no longer frightened him. That evening, Dorothy met him at the door. I made an appointment with Dr. Morrison, Friday at 4. Phil hesitated. I don't know if I'm ready. You spent the whole weekend as Phyllis, she said. Of course, she was right. Dr. Morrison's office was discreet, unassuming. Phil parked and lingered for 10 minutes before finally walking inside. The waiting room was quiet, soft music filling the space, nothing signaling what kind of visit this would be. You must be Phil, the receptionist said kindly. Dr. Morrison is ready for you. The therapist was younger than expected, early 40s, warm eyes, a soft purple dress. The office was simple, 2 chairs facing each other, no desk separating them. Phil, welcome. What brings you here today? And so he began. Childhood memories of trying on shoes. Teenage shame. Adult secrecy. The weekend is Phyllis. Dorothy's acceptance. His friend's suspicions. Everything poured out. Dr. Morrison listened without judgment, asking only clarifying questions. When he finished, she leaned back, thoughtful. Thank you for sharing. That took courage. And it's more common than you think. Really? Gender identity exists on a spectrum. Some people are comfortable with the gender they were assigned. Others aren't. There's no right or wrong way to feel. But I'm 55. Isn't it too late to figure this out? Never. It's never too late to be yourself. They spent the next hour exploring options, terminology, support groups, and resources. She handed him pamphlets, recommended books, and websites. I'd like to see you again next week, she said. Phil nodded. For the first time in decades, he felt like he might finally have a path forward. And Phil, Dr. Morrison asked gently, you mentioned preferring the name Phyllis. Would you like me to use that in our sessions? Phil's throat tightened. Yes, please. Then I'll see you next week, Phyllis, she said warmly. Alone in the parking lot, Phyllis let the tears come, 10 long minutes of release before climbing into her car. Weeks passed in a blur of therapy and small, deliberate changes. Phyllis began to appear at home in the evenings, first only with Dorothy, then when their daughter visited. Rebecca froze in the doorway, eyes wide. Hi, sweetheart. Mom said. I didn't really believe it. I know, Phyllis said softly. It's a shock. Rebecca hesitated a moment, then stepped forward and hugged her. The auburn hair suits you, she said. Michael, their son, struggled more. He stormed out at first, refusing to speak for a month. But eventually, he softened, especially after his wife threatened to withhold visits with the grandchildren. The grandchildren adapted immediately. Grandpa wears dresses now, 6-year-old Emma declared proudly to anyone who would listen. They're pretty. Work remained Phil's domain. He wasn't ready to explain Phyllis there, maybe he never would be. But evenings and weekends belonged to her. She joined a book club, went shopping with Dorothy, even attended the support group Dr. Morrison recommended. The first meeting terrified her, a church basement, folding chairs in a circle, a dozen people at various stages of transition. Yet they welcomed her immediately, shared stories, offered advice, from voice training to handling family rejection. It gets easier, said Samantha, who had transitioned 10 years ago. Not simple. But easier. Spring arrived before Phil even realized winter had passed. One Sunday morning, he, or rather Phyllis, stood in the bedroom, choosing an outfit for family dinner. The closet now held both Phil and Phyllis' wardrobes. Dorothy appeared in the doorway. The green dress brings out your eyes. You think? Trust me. Phyllis smoothed the emerald fabric over her hips and caught her reflection. Not perfect, not young, not conventionally beautiful, but authentic, real in a way Phil never had been. The boys still met for coffee weekly. They'd stopped asking about Phyllis after Phil insisted she had returned to Ohio. Lyle occasionally teased about the weekend affair, but the others shut him down. Sometimes Phil wanted to tell them the truth, that Phyllis hadn't left, had never left, had always been here. But the words wouldn't come. Maybe someday. Ready? Dorothy called from downstairs. Almost. Phyllis applied a brighter lipstick, more confident this time. The auburn wig settled into place like an old friend. One last look in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't flawless, but she was radiant, genuinely, joyfully alive. Coming, she called, voice pitched naturally higher after months of practice. Downstairs, Dorothy waited with keys and a smile. You look lovely, she said. I feel lovely, Phyllis replied. They drove to Rebecca's house in comfortable silence. The radio played old country songs, Dorothy hummed along. Normal Sunday afternoon, yet nothing was the same. No regrets? Dorothy asked as they pulled up. Phyllis thought back to the cabin, to Lyle's drunken visit, to the terror and thrill of opening the door that first night. None, she said firmly. The front door burst open before they reached it. Emma ran out, pink dress flying, yelling, "Grandma, Grandpa, Phyllis." Phyllis caught her, spun her around, laughter spilling from both of them. "I like your dress," Emma said. "I like yours too," Phyllis replied. "Mommy says they match." "Green and pink are complementary," Emma added proudly. Rebecca appeared in the doorway, smiling. "Come in before dinner gets cold." Inside, the house smelled of roast chicken and fresh bread. Michael poured wine for the adults, still awkward but trying. Phyllis, looking good," he said. "Thanks, Michael," she replied with a smile. They gathered around the table. 3 generations. Grace was said. Food passed. Conversation flowed. "Tell us about your week, Dad," Rebecca prompted. Phyllis paused, then smiled. The evening wound down with ordinary joys, the small victories, quiet laughter, and shared love. In these moments, the volunteering, Dorothy's pride, the children's laughter, Phil found a peace he had never imagined. A contentment built on authenticity, acceptance, and love. And somewhere deep inside, Phyllis felt truly at home.